Shalom, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. We're up to page 59 of Volume 2 of Rabbi Victor Miller's new translation and commentary of Duties of the Mind. And we are in Shah HaBekina, the Gate of Reflection. And we're looking at the reasons that people don't appreciate the world. And we're up to the second reason, which is part 9. Let's just review the first reason before we get into it. Part 1 of the first reason is people are too busy. People often put themselves in situations where they get involved in the rat race and they pursue things which require a lot of time and effort and energy, which really provide no long-term benefits except for perhaps maybe a little bit of fitness, maybe a bit of fun, and socializing, and it passes the time, and it can be a pursuit of entertainment and a combination of being distracted. The next one is what's next. People are preoccupied with what's on the horizon and don't sit down and fixate on what is happening in the here and now, or what they have that's going for them in the here and now. They're just looking at the acquisition of the next big thing that they can conceivably achieve in their lives. Next one is jealousy. People look and see that a person has something and they think, how did that person get that when I'm on a greater wage than that person? That person's driving in a Tesla, and I know for a fact that person earns probably, less than half of what I earn. I don't know how that's possible. And I've always wondered why they've managed to be able to live in the house that they live in, because, I don't see them, really having incomes that are anywhere near what would be able to generate that. And you start thinking about things that are frivolous and that of no value whatsoever. And you're taken away by thoughts of jealousy and keeping up with the Joneses. Okay, so the second reason that people are not happy in the world and why they don't appreciate what Hashem gives them is that when they come into this world, they are born like foolish animals, empty of any kind of understanding. As it says in the verse, quoting from Job 11:12, a human being is like a wild donkey when he is born ignorant. When a man is born, he knows nothing at all. Of course, the young child thinks he knows everything. And in most cases, he continues all his life to think that he knows everything. But even wise people who do not recognize the truth when they grow up start out in life knowing anything at all. Not knowing anything at all. Let me read that again. I just butchered that sentence. But even wise people who do not recognize the truth when they grow up, I did it again. But even wise people who do recognize the truth when they grow up start out in life not knowing anything at all. So, when you see somebody that you perceive as being full of wisdom and knowledge and understanding and insights, they weren't always like that. They grew up in the school. It's very much likely that they grew up in the school of hard knocks. It was tough for them to get to the place they are now. And it took a lot of elbow grease and a lot of leg work and a lot of what I often call hard yards. If you're not prepared to do the hard yards, you're not going to achieve anything. So you need to ask Hashem to give you the strength and the motivation to really go the distance. If you're not asking Hashem for divine assistance every day, why not? Why are you just happy to sort of sit in sort of mediocrity? Let's get up and get going and achieve as much as we can in this finite time that we have in this life. They grow up with all the abundant good that Hashem provides. Oh, and another thing that I want to mention is just be very careful that you don't grow up over the years in a way where you want to come across as being learned or being knowledgeable and putting on a sort of a show and getting a kick out of people thinking, oh, he's so smart. Really sort of put that down as much as you can, because then ego and pride begins to attach itself to the pursuit of what you're doing, and that could undermine everything. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is when somebody is about to tell somebody who is known as being quite knowledgeable, and they stop them in mid-sentence and say, I know, is one of the worst traits you can have. Somebody's telling you something, do your best to refrain from interrupting them mid-sentence and telling them you know. And even at the end, it's not necessarily required that you say, I know, because there's maybe a nuance to whatever it is that you don't know. Maybe you know an aspect of it, maybe you know 90% of the thing, but if you let the person talk and let them get it all out, you might find that they've brought 10% of what you thought you know to the table, and that's to your advantage. So keep your mouth shut. You don't have to interrupt somebody. I know. It's one of the worst traits. It's one of the worst habits that a person can get into. I had a family member who still does it. You tell this person anything and they will stop you and they, I know, and you're like, oh gosh. And so I've seen over this person's life that they just haven't gone anywhere. They've just sort of stayed where they have been because it obstructs the ability to learn and be teachable and to grow. If you're in any way sabotaging your own potential to be taught, and usually people are doing it unconsciously, they're not doing it consciously. Nobody's going to go out of their way to be unteachable, but they have such a huge blind spot in how they interact with people, and as a consequence, nobody tells them anything anymore because they already know. I know. You don't know. How about that? You don't know. You can only benefit from listening to even the fool. Even the fool has his story to tell. They're accustomed to all the good from the beginning of their lives. So these are people that grow up with abundance. From their infancy, they start enjoying the light of day and the benefits of food. Actually, no, this is just the average person. This is talking about a normal person that has all the basic requirements, which are just out of this world. From their infancy, they start enjoying the light of day and the benefits of food, warmth, and clothing. However, in their early years, they do not yet have the sense to appreciate the good that they are receiving, and so they take everything for granted. Later, when they finally acquire some sekel, some intelligence, it is already too late. They become so accustomed to the favors of Hashem that they do not sense that they are getting anything at all. And so this is what many people do. They become so accustomed to and so invested in the expectation that they are going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to be able to swing their legs out of bed and go through the motions like they did the day before and the day before that and the day before that and the day before that, because it's been going on for so long. So this must be going to continue for a long time. So I don't really have to think about it because I know it's just going to be granted for me, because for the last 20 or 30 years, I've been doing the same thing. So, you would think, looking at the past and the way everything sort of happened, that I'm going to get another 10, 20, 30 years. No, that's not the case. This day, every day could be the last day that you'll ever be able to walk, perhaps. The last day you'll ever be able to, Has v'shalom, see, perhaps. Maybe it'll be the last day you'll be in existence. And so you need to wake up with that appreciation for the new day of life that you've been given by the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and say, Modi ani lefanecha melech v'chayim shegezarta b'nishmota v'chem l'reba imunateka. So I gratefully thank you, O living a King. I gratefully thank you, O living eternal King, that you have returned my soul within with compassion. Abundant is your faithfulness. If I can speak properly, that would be good. Baruch Hashem. So you've got to go, hey, hang on. Like, I've got a functioning brain. I've got eyes that I can control. I can close them. I can open them. I can look in different directions. I can breathe. I can draw life-giving air into my lungs, and I can expel that air. I can raise and I can lower each of my legs, even to the point that I can carry my weight and balance, and I can walk in a reasonably comfortable way for a long period of time. I can even run. I can grip things with my hands. And not only that, with my fingernails being what they are, I can I can actually do fiddly things, very fiddly, tedious things with my fingers. And I have 2 limbs that end in these finite 5 digits per limb. And they look great. The human body, the way if I do say so myself, it's just the way the human body, the male and the female body are arrayed, is just a work of genius. And this is what you've all got going for you. You know, if you're young, unlike me, you have a full head of hair, and you have toes. We've already spoken about the fingernails. You have hips, you have knees. How crucial are knees until you finally realize, you know, it's not until your knees finally go you realize, wow, knees, you are amazing to me. And I never gave you guys the love and the respect that you deserved. Hashem, please forgive me for taking advantage and overlooking and just neglecting the value of my knees that are keeping me upright and enabling me to walk. It's just terrific. They become accustomed to them, the good things of life, until those good things become so routine, so well known that they seem inherent to them. So you become so familiar with them, you just like, it's like when, you know, a couple meet for the first time, they're really excited, and then over time that excitement dies down because they won't take breaks and pace themselves in the relationship. They, you know, just really jump each other until, excuse how crass that might sound, until they get tired of one another, and then they can't stand the look of each other 3 or 4 or 5 years down the track. And so you need to take time to be apart. And Hashem in his wisdom has enabled certain things in the natural law of the way a woman's body functions, a time when that is allocated. And if a person is beyond the flush of her first youth, so to speak, and no longer gets a cycle, then the husband and the wife set a pre-designated time to separate, to have a time apart, so they can maintain that appreciation of each other. And if they don't, you'll just see that people just get fed up. People just, they take the other person for granted, and they no longer see that person's beauty, even though that person may still very much have that beauty that they had when they first met. It's just true. It's what happens. So you have to, how important do you think the relationship is to you, and how much you're willing to do? Are you willing to go to that end? And if the answer is no, well, you are going to have bumps in the road down the track in that area. And so you need to go, okay. People say, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not sleeping somewhere else for, 5 to 10 days in another room in our house once a month. I'm not doing that. Okay, don't do it then. Don't do it. Don't do it. And there'll come a time when you wish you had. There'll come a time when you wish you had. They become accustomed to them, the good things of life, until those good things become so routine and so well known that they seem inherent to them. They think they are human beings, and as such, they see and hear, they speak and walk. That is who they are. What else is a person? A person is an individual who naturally has all the ordinary faculties. He can perform basic physical functions like urinating. He can run, he can understand. That is what a person is supposed to be. They don't begin to understand that what they have and can do is not inherent, for there are people who don't have these abilities because of their habitual way of thinking, which begin in their very youngest years. They are not able to appreciate anything. You see somebody who's got a deformity or a limb that's severely deformed and withered and not functional. I remember as a very young child, I would have been probably not even 5 years of age, going to a preschool. Actually, I was probably five or six, going to a school, kindergarten, maybe preschool, I can't remember. And in the class was 1 or 2 kids with some very obvious limb abnormalities. And I started to cry. I started crying. And the teachers would go, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I was too embarrassed to tell them that I was crying because I was looking at these kids with this, I think it was 1 kid or 2, I can't remember, a boy and a girl. And they both had something wrong with their arms. One arm was just a little kind of thing. And I couldn't I just started crying. I was frightened. They frightened me. And I didn't want to tell the teachers, why are you crying? Why are you crying? I said, I never told them. I think I've tried to make something else up. I just feel sick or something, or, I'm upset about something else. I just have not a vivid memory now, but I have a memory of being at this school, Caringbah, I think it was. It was when, it was before my mum got married, or just after my mum got married to my stepfather, and I was going to this school, Janali, I think it was Janali, because we were living with my grandmother on my mother's side. Yeah, it was just, I remember seeing these kids, and every time I'd see them, I'd start crying. Because I don't know, I was scared. I was like, oh, what's wrong with that person? I was told too, when I saw my sister born, and I saw her, I happened to see them changing her nappy, I started crying, hysterically crying, because she didn't have a little member. I didn't understand the difference between a boy and a girl. And so when I saw that they weren't formed like I was formed, I started crying hysterically, like, what's happened? And they had to explain to me, no, this is a girl. I do remember that. My memory's pretty good on some things, but it's pretty hazy on others. It's kind of bizarre. Okay. They think that their attributes and abilities are inherent rights, which can never depart from them. So, people get so upset. They can't see as well as they used to. They've got to wear glasses now, and they're kind of, they're in a bad mood. Like, what? What? And, they feel that they've been robbed. I heard it the other day. There was a school friend, a really, really nice lady. She was in a year underneath me, and she was friends with another lady who was in my year, and we I wasn't close friends with her or anything. We were just sort of school acquaintances, and she passed away. She passed away recently due to cancer. And somebody in the comments, I think it was when one of her daughters let everybody know on her profile, somebody in the comments said, she's robbed. You've been robbed. And obviously this came from a good place, this comment, but by somebody saying, when somebody passes away prematurely, that anybody has been robbed, the individual that died has been robbed, the loved ones have been robbed, there's no other way to look at this except that you are attacking the creator of the universe's management of the world, and you're indicating that he dropped the ball when it came to this person because they have died prematurely. And so that is something that needs to be compensated, because it's not fair. And and I know it came from a good place. I know the person didn't mean anything by it. Didn't mean any harm by saying you've been robbed. But they're essentially saying, they're attacking the sovereignty of the Kadesh Baruch Hu when they say that. And I've heard it before. I heard it from a workmate when he attended the funeral of a 50-something father of two. And he said it in passing at the workplace. He says, I think, the family got robbed. I think the guy that passed away and his family got robbed. And this was a Christian man. And they don't realize what they're saying. Don't say that. If say something else. If you're saying that, you're attacking the righteousness and the fairness of the way Hashem governs the world. You don't see the big picture. You only see from this finite location, from two eyes in a human body that's firmly 2 feet planted firmly on the ground. You don't see what the overarching thing is happening in the world. Of course, it's sad when somebody dies, and certainly you can't stand in a funeral of somebody who passed away in their sleep in their 90s and shake your fist at heaven and you'd say, why did you take her from us? She was in her 90s. I can't believe you took her before her time. We've got to be mindful of what we're saying, what we say every day, even things that we're trying to say that are from a place of love. If we're not sitting down and learning, we can find that maybe a lot of our rhetoric is actually we're unaware that it's an attack on Hashem, attack on Hashem's management. But somebody says, well, doesn't Hasatan, rule? Isn't he the prince of the power of the air? Doesn't he rule this world? Yes, he does, but he can't do anything unless he gets approval from the Kadesh Baruch Hu. He can't do anything. He can't even function himself without an approval from Hashem. And in effect, Hasatan, the accuser, and the Sitra Achra, the dark forces, they are all on Hashem's payroll, so to speak. Hashem uses them. They're not a portion of creation that got out of control that Hashem can't seem to actually gather up again and put in a bag and keep under wraps and keep control of. This is crisis theology. This is reactionist theology. And this is heresy. It's apikorsut. It's heresy. To think such things. Everything that Hashem does, and particularly so things that in the moment, in the now, seem to be sad, seem to be frightening, seem to be even horrendous, even horrific, in the long run there'll be something that will be brought to bear from this, which will ultimately be for the good. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense there. They think that their attributes and their abilities are inherent rights, which can never depart from them. They are sure that they will always be able to see, walk, and talk. They will always be the people that they are. They believe that these rights will never leave them all their days. Went to a nursing home once to visit the cousin of my first wife. And it was a nursing home up in Katoomba. Some of you might be familiar with this place. It sort of sits at the base of the main drag where all the shops are. It's on the right, sort of on the corner of a roundabout. It's this big sort of old Victorian type sort of home. I would say it's a mansion, and it's been converted into a nursery. And we went in there to visit this cousin, and it was an eye-opener for me, I tell you. I was like, when I walked in, I could smell this faint smell of feces, and it wasn't one of the best nursing homes I've ever been into. And I saw an old lady being helped down a corridor, walking with a truss, and two orderlies helping her, and quite visibly she had these sort of adult nappies on, diapers on, and they weren't sort of put on properly, the clothes weren't put over it properly, and you just could see that these people were just holding on to any last skerrick of dignity that they have, and their lives have just come down to being in a room with some meager sort of personal possessions arrayed around the bed and a cupboard, maybe a TV or something. And these are people like you and me. These are people that have lived long and healthy lives. They're old now. There was one gentleman I walked past, like a mess room, where they a cafeteria, and it was an Aboriginal man dressed as a woman with a handbag and a wig. This trans man, and he was sort of sitting there, standing. And he saw me walk past, and he had his handbag in his hand and this wig on, and I heard that he passed away actually only a few weeks after we had this visit, and then out the back there was a lot of people there in wheelchairs been put out in the sun on a sort of a grassy area, and you just sort of see the looks on their faces. These people are like, they're sort of shells of who they used to be. And it's good. If you get a chance, do it, because it'll be a splash of cold water on your face. But it's really it can be a shocking experience. But it's what we need. We need a slap in the face. We need a bucket of cold water. She pointed out where the morgue was as well. And I was just like, I was sort of a bit depressed for the next couple of hours. But it made me think, I better get my act together. I better clean up my act. I better start being more appreciative and being a nicer husband, being a nicer father, being a nicer person in general. It's what we need. It's these things, we need to put ourselves in these situations at times to give yourself a little wake-up call. Self-generate your own wake-up calls rather than have Hashem cause you to actually have to go through them under duress. So, put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to keep it together. And it's a good way of managing managing yourself. Put yourself in a situation, if you ever get an opportunity to go through a police station and go into the area of the police station, which is the forensics lab. I did that a couple of times when I was a kid with the boys' youth group. They took us to Penrith Police Station. We went to the forensic portion of the precinct of the police station, and there were photos there. There was like a metal autopsy slab and things, and it was just like, and I was really young, but it makes you kind of think, whoa, this is I better behave myself. And I think if more kids today could be taken to places where things aren't like they're used to, it's really good for their neshama. And even later, when we gain some sekel, some intelligence or knowledge, and their intelligence becomes sharper, they are too foolish to understand all the good that Hashem has bestowed upon them. So it's they've left it too long. They're sort of aging adults now, and the window of opportunity is sort of passed them by. Their behavior is in contrast to that of Adam Harishon, the first man, who was created with full sekel, full intelligence. As soon as he opened his eyes for the first time, he realized that he was able to walk, talk, see, and think. He was amazed at the powers that he had been given. He appreciated every one of his faculties. When he breathed the air, he appreciated it, and he said, "How good is air? How good is water?" Remember, you're running, or it's a hot day, and somebody gives you a nice, cool drink of water, and it slacks your thirst, and it's just, there's nothing better than it. It's just water. And you're so grateful for drinking this nice, clean, clear water on a hot day. This was because he was born with sekel, but we are born without sekel, and by the time we acquire it, we're already prisoners of habit. So the Yetzer Hara tries to run you around in those formative years to establish and ingrain these poor, bad, really dangerous habits, or at least these habits that are detrimental, and it hopes, the hope of all hopes, that these habits stick, because when you begin to mature and start to settle down and start to become more reasonable, all this damage that it's done, that the dark forces have done as when you're an adolescent, in ingraining all these bad habits and these things that you do habitually, then they've planted a good barrier for you to have victory, because they've already instilled in you as you're growing up and finding your feet, and you didn't have a full intellect, had not fully developed, and so you'd adopted these things that were cool but were detrimental to you. Maybe you got tattoos, got covered in tattoos, and that's always a good one, because if you can cover you in tattoos, it's expensive to get tattoos removed, and it's also painful. It can be even life-threatening. And, like a tattoo, depending what the tattoo is or the volume of tattoos you have on your body, the Satan, he can go, got ya, I've got ya, because you're always going to be a signpost for me now. You have people who do become Baal Tshuva, Masters of Return, and they keep the tattoos, as a memory of what they were. But if you have other people look at them, it can be a bad influence. And other people from communities, their kids could see you with the tattoos, and they could say, "Wow, they look so cool, I want to get one of them." And you're like, no. So you got to keep them covered all the time, because you don't want to sort of have this picture of yourself that, look, I've got tattoos and I'm okay, and look, don't they look cool? And you don't want to be responsible for that. So it's it's sort of like, once they've given you an appearance, all these people are getting body modifications, they've got you. Yeah, particularly if they do a body modification on you, or you have trans surgery or something like that. So once you have the surgery, it's a little hard to sort of kind of come back if you come to your senses. Their behavior is in contrast to Adam Harishon, that I read all that already. They don't give any thought to the obligation of thanking Hashem for these things, because they don't appreciate the value of the good, nor the kindness of the one who bestowed it upon them. We have the tale of the lost child, part 10. Note, to help us better understand the second reason, the author now offers an important mashal parable in which he compares the thoughtless people to a small boy who was lost in the wilderness. They can be compared to a small boy who was found in the wilderness by a kind-hearted man. Feeling sorry for him, he brought the boy to his home and he raised him, fed him and clothed him, and generously provided all that was good and necessary for him. Until the boy grew up and he became aware of all the various ways in which his benefactor had been good to him. When the boy matured and became a fine young man, he came to appreciate what was done for him, and he was grateful to the benefactor. Later, the same kind-hearted man heard about a prisoner who had been taken captive by his enemy, and the prisoner was a man who owed money, but he was unable to repay it, and so his vindictive creditor arranged to have him thrown into a harsh prison. There, the prisoner experienced intense suffering because the creditor caused him to be tortured. For many days, the prisoner lay hungry and naked in a dungeon where he was beaten as well. And the kind-hearted man heard about this, and his compassion was stirred by the prisoner's distress. And he cajoled the prisoner's enemy into releasing him and forgiving him his debt. And the kind-hearted man then brought the released prisoner to his own home. Bear in mind, the initial individual that was also helped by this kind-hearted man, he's sort of sitting there kind of observing what's going on. But he couldn't put him into a regular room in the house. Instead, he gave him a clean place in his shed. Also, he didn't give him the same food that he ate at his own table. He just gave him simple but nourishing food. The released prisoner was so happy in these conditions that he sang the praises of his benefactor. Remember, he was in a very harsh prison with poor hygiene, food that wasn't nutritional, and he was being tortured daily. And now he's in a very clean, neat and tidy room in a shed, and he's been bought nutritious food every day. The released prisoner was so happy in these conditions that he sang the praises of his benefactor. He felt love and gratitude toward the kind man who got him out of prison and kept him alive. As it happened, the young man who was being brought up like the kind man's own son came out to the shed to talk with the ex-prisoner. When he heard the man's story, he couldn't understand what he had to be grateful for. He said, "You're living in a shed and you're eating bread. So is that called life? Is that called life?" And the kind-hearted man gave the released prisoner only a fraction of the good treatment that he had given to the boy. Nevertheless, the prisoner was grateful for the kindness that this man had done to him, and he thanked him more than the boy who grew up in the house. Whenever the kind-hearted man brought some food to the ex-prisoner in the shed, the man was profuse in his gratitude, and he was so grateful that he fell down at the feet of his benefactor, and he could never get through thanking him. But the young man who grew up in the house looked at this with surprise. And he said, what's it all about? After all, what benefit are you getting? This was because the ex-prisoner had gone from conditions of privation and distress to a comfortable and tranquil existence. When did this transition occur? At the time when he was able to fully appreciate the change. In contrast, the young man who had been rescued from the wilderness and given a home as a small child had no sense of what was happening to him at the time. Because remember, he grew up, the first man that was given aid was found as a small child in the wilderness. So he grew up in the house of the kind-hearted man who had obviously had a bit of wealth. And so it became normalcy for him to grow up in a nice home with a loving environment and a kind mentor, a father figure. And so he doesn't know anything else. And so he goes, yep, that's the norm for me. And then years later, this other, not a child or a baby or an adolescent, like a full-grown young man, young still, but a man, gets rescued from being tortured in a prison and is given a shed and is given just basic nutritional food, but basic food like bread, maybe a stew here and there. He is jumping around for joy compared to this other young man who was saved found in the wilderness and brought into this benefactor's home from a very small child. And so he did not appreciate it at all. That's why the ex-prisoner deeply appreciated the goodness of the kind-hearted man who saved him. But the boy failed to understand the value of the good treatment that was showered on him, even after the boy's intelligence developed and his mind matured. So likely that most of us, some of us maybe watching this video, have been through tortures and have lived in a harsh environment. And you have no problem at all jumping around and dancing for joy at your current circumstances, even though they may be, in comparison to the rest of the first world, a fairly basic lifestyle with fairly minimal things, and you are so appreciative. Maybe there's people out there that are viewing this video that are like that, and I'd say it'd be quite rare. But most people, they grew up in a pretty good environment. Okay, their life wasn't perfect. They had issues growing up as a child, but they were never went to sleep hungry. And so what do? Am I saying here that we should put ourselves in a serious life risk situation so that we can all of a sudden appreciate Hashem? Chas v'shalom. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying just do it mentally. Put yourself in a position and think, okay, I've not only never been in that position, and so I can't really appreciate it. Okay, fine. But I have grown up having all my basic needs met and then some. And so I'm appreciative of the fact that I didn't actually have to go to prison and go through trials and torture. So that I've got that additional appreciation for that. And then knowing that that's something that could have happened, but it didn't happen. What if it did? How much would I appreciate the here and now with what I have now? You can add that to the appreciation of avoiding that through no fault of your own, wherever you were born in the world, however good your parents were to you, you've avoided that. You can appreciate what it would be like to have experienced that, but on top of that, you can appreciate that you were protected for the most part, and you might have had something else really happen to you. Maybe you were abused, but you always had clean clothes, you always had food on the table, you always received an education, you always had good friends in the street, you always had, a BMX bike like everybody else did. There was a multitude of other things. Sure, there was probably some bad things going on, some horrors even. But you can appreciate the other things that you had going for you. There's so many people walking around that are giving so much emphasis and weight to the horror that they experienced, some despicable thing, which is very much a bad thing. It's very much something they should have to get off their chest and work through or whatever. Hopefully with Hashem front and center in that, and with a rabbi rather than a secular counselor. But there are other things in their lives that were amazing that they tend to get drowned out because they want to ring this bell to sound the alarm. Look at the horror that I endured. Please throw me a pity party. And it's not to belittle the whatever it is that you went through. I'm not doing that. But I'm just saying, don't make the rest of your life be about that and limp along as a survivor. You don't want to be known as a survivor. You want to be known as somebody who serves the Kadesh Baruch Hu and is uncompromising and is enthusiastic and has a zest for life and is a huge positive influence on other people. You're not one of these people that sort of turn up to a party and just cause the tone of everything to go down 5 notches because of what happened to you. And wherever you go, you're always two sentences away of reminding people, this is what I went through. Okay, whenever the kind-hearted man brought some food to the ex-prisoner in the shed, the man was profuse with gratitude. He was so grateful that he fell down at the feet of his benefactor and he could never get through thanking him. But the young man who grew up in the house looked at this with surprise and said, what's this all about? After all, what benefit are you getting? This was because the ex-prisoner had gone through conditions of privations and distress to a comfortable and tranquil existence. When did this transition occur? At the time when he was able to fully appreciate the change. In contrast, the young man had been rescued from the wilderness and given a home as a small child, had no sense of what was happening to him at the time, and so he did not appreciate it at all. So as a child, when they're in deprivation, they don't know anything else. They don't know any other type of life. If they grow up in a poor neighborhood, they don't know any better. So they don't have the pain of knowing what it's like to grow up in a rich house in a rich place. And in a way, that's sort of a protective mechanism, that takes away some unnecessary additional sorrow to their situation and gives them a fighting chance to be able to cope with it. And sometimes people that have grown up in difficult circumstances, a lot of times, people are grow up to be far more interesting people and people with more empathy. That's why the ex-prisoner deeply appreciated the goodness of the kind-hearted man who saved him, but the boy failed to understand the value of the good treatment that was showered on him, even after the boy's intelligence developed and his mind matured. The boy was unable to appreciate the good treatment that he received as much as the ex-prisoner appreciated his own good treatment. The message for us is that since all of us grew up with the benefits that Hashem gives to mankind, we are so accustomed to them that we are unable to appreciate them unless we make an effort to start thinking about these things from the very beginning. Okay, so that's the message for today. You have become so accustomed to so many benefits and blessings that you are blind to them, and therefore you lack gratitude. Now, you may not necessarily be a bad person. You may be a great person and a person that people see as maybe somewhat being a godly person. But what if I told you that there is a whole smorgasbord, or there's a whole, what's the right word? There's a whole air hanger full of blessings and things that you've been bestowed with that have got no attachment to them of any record of you showing appreciation. And this is not because you're a bad person. You've just grown up accustomed to always having a roof over your head, always being healthy, always having somebody who loved you, a mother who loved you, your grandparents who dote over you and spoil you and love you. Not everybody grows up with grandparents who love them and treat them like royalty and in a very special way when they come to visit. I remember my grandparents were always really excited about me, and I felt like I was very special. They made me feel like I was very special for many years of my life, and there was a dark part of my life, but when I was in the care of my grandparents, it almost made up for that. There was a huge light there. There was a huge darkness there, but there was also a huge light there. So you don't want that darkness, and to sort of sit in that darkness and not acknowledge, Hashem, as bad as that was, there were some other great things that many people don't actually ever get availed of that I got to experience. Okay. So that's very much, I think, what we should be looking at. We're so accustomed to them that we're unable to appreciate them unless we make an effort to start thinking about these things from the very beginning. So that, by merely watching this video, it's on record now in Shemaim, in the heavenlies, that you have started a process of beginning to acknowledge and strive to show some sort of effort, to exert some sort of effort to begin to examine things that you should have been really appreciative for, that you haven't been in the past, and you want to amend that. So that's good. That's a good thing to be onto now. Rather than just be into what everybody else is looking at on YouTube in the religious world, which is what's happening in the Middle East and all these things and these are big picture global things, and they're consumed into them every waking hour of their life, and they don't go through their whole lifetime without fixing one flawed character trope. What a distraction. What an amazing distraction. Tell your friends, wake them up. We need to try, I shouldn't laugh. We need to try to look at each good thing in our life as if it was the first time, as if we've never seen it before. When we look at bread, we need to look at it as if it is the first time we've seen bread. And you can do that with your eyesight. When you wake up in the morning, you can look around and get up and navigate to the bathroom. You can pretend that you're seeing for the first time. And imagine how that would feel like, That's what they teach actors and, theatrical performers to do in acting school. Pretend that you've got sight for the first time. Show me. I want to see somebody who's an adult who's seeing for the first time. How would that sound like? What would that look like? Go. When we look at clothing, we have to look at it. Excuse me, as if it is the first time we've ever had clothing. We need to think what a great benefit it is to us. We need to study each good thing in life. Otherwise, we will live our lives as a prisoner of the habits that grow in us from the time that we are born. Those bad things that did happen to us when we were children, they can be a contributing source to the bad things that we end up doing. Because we have bad influences. And one of the ways to break that cycle is to begin to start a regime of acknowledging all the things that you should really be grateful for. But you don't see anybody else being grateful like that, and that also affects it. Everybody else doesn't seem as happy as, and that guy's got he's got like a really nice house and a good job and a lovely family, and I don't see him dancing around. And all these are contributing factors. And so eventually the wheels are going to fall off what he's got, and he will realize the value of what he has now, even though you don't see him being joyful now, but it'll be in the form of sorrow once it's all gone, once it begins to go away. So, Hashem's going to make you appreciate it one way or the other. One way is to be appreciative of it now and jump around and enjoy. The other way is you're going to appreciate it once it's lost, and then that will be a form of sadness and grief and mourning and loss. And I know which one I would prefer to do. So it's up to me, it's up to you to go, okay, I'm going to get excited now. I'm going to start skipping around and singing songs. And I mean that literally too. Start dancing around the house. Your family are going to think you've lost your mind, but do it. Start dancing around the house and thanking Hashem. Not only that, you're beautiful. You're an absolute gorgeous, handsome man, beautiful woman. Where's the gratitude? Where's the thanks? Where's the praise? Where's the acknowledgement? Acknowledge it. So thank you, Hashem, for making me who I am. Thank you, Hashem, for allowing me to get to this phase, and thank you that I've been able to learn today. I've been able to be locked and engaged in something to do with your Torah today. Because all this is recorded in Shemayim, all the hours that you spend engaged and about the business of your Father in heaven, and that is his Torah. This was because the boy had been accustomed to good treatment from his earliest childhood. Did I miss a bit? We need to try to look at each thing in our life as if it were the first time. Okay, I read that. And we need to study each good thing in our life, otherwise we'll live all our lives as a prisoner of the habits that grow on us from the time we were born. This was because the boy had been accustomed to good treatment from his earliest childhood. Nevertheless, no logical-minded person could doubt that the kindness and goodness that the benefactor lavished on the boy were much more extensive and visible, and that the boy surely had a greater obligation to be forever thankful and full of praise. And that's true. The first boy, he was given far more benefits than the prisoner who had been rescued from jail. And yet the one that was rescued from jail, given just basic food and a shed to live in, he was the one that was more profound and profuse in his thankfulness and his gratitude towards the benefactor. Isn't that ironic? Whereas the young man who was saved as a child in the wilderness, he was given way more, to the point where he comes and speaks to him and he goes, "Why are you so happy? You're making me look bad. From where I came from, I'm in heaven right now from where I came from. I'm in heaven. This is heaven. You don't see it. You just see a shed and you just see, a bit of bread and a few vegetables, maybe a stew on a table and some basic clothing. I see a mansion. I see a banquet. I see royal garbs compared to where I came from. I see it. I feel it. I smell it. But you don't see that because you don't know what it is to have lived the life that I've lived and been treated like I was in Gehenna on this earth in jail. But you can sit there and you can internalize it with your imagination. That's why Hashem gives us an imagination, not to fantasize about that girl in the street, or to be popular or be rich and famous and, you know, sit there and daydream all day about how awesome it would be to be a hero and, you know, all these things. He's given you an imagination so you can imagine the things that you have been spared of experiencing, and to enable you to have a springboard to propel you to huge heights of appreciation and praise for Hashem. You know, like that's why he gave us the ability to potentially have such elaborate imaginations. But we misuse that to make worlds of just nothing, of just entertainment, of imagination and like futile imaginings. Okay. This is as the verse says in Hosea 11:3. I accustomed Ephraim to luxuries. I treated the people of Israel to a period of good times when they came to their land, carrying them in their leaders' arms. But they did not know that it was I who healed them from all their troubles. And we'll leave it there. That takes us to page 64. So, you know, when we come into a time of prosperity, we can get to a point where we begin to forget about Hashem, put Hashem on the back burner, because everything's sort of working out maybe beyond our wildest dreams. And so we can very much run the risk of becoming lazy, becoming less engaged with Hashem and connected to Hashem because of all the abundant materialism that we're experiencing. And this can be a greater challenge to a person's connection to the Kadesh Baruch Hu than being plunged into deep poverty and pain and daily torture. You know, there's a lot more people attached to Hashem who are poor than are rich, if you kind of know what I'm getting at. I don't know whether that's where we're going. It might be, but we'll leave it until next time. Listen, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like and share. Please put a comment. The secret word is care. The secret word is care. Put it in a sentence so you don't give it away for other people. And I'll know, you'll know, and Hashem will know that you made it to this far in the learning today. And it's great. This will be recorded for all time to your benefit and to mine as well, and to others if you share it. Anyway, thank you so much. Until next time, bye for now.